The Saboteur is an open-world action-adventure game developed by Pandemic Studios and published by EA. Released in 2009, it follows Sean Devlin, an Irish race car driver and mechanic, on his quest for vengeance against the Nazis during the occupation of Paris in the 1940s. This was Pandemic's final release before being shut down a month before the game's full release, and has become a testament to Pandemic's development team and the legacy they left behind. While The Saboteur remains one of my favourite titles I've ever played, and one of the many reasons I love history so much today, it isn't without its issues. In this video, I want to analyse the legacy this game left behind and discuss its accompanying history and how historical inaccuracy is acceptable in some circumstances. The Saboteur presents players with an open world to explore, predominantly featuring Nazi-occupied Paris at the centre, alongside areas such as Normandy and Le Havre to the north, and German Saarbrücken to the east. Iconic landmarks such as the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower are accurately represented in this game. At the time of its release, it was one of the most detailed 3D representations of Paris in a video game. Throughout this open world, players will encounter German military positions such as sniper towers, armoured divisions, and anti-aircraft guns, which the player can destroy through acts of sabotage and slowly increase hope among the local population. This is represented by the black and white veil present in German-dominated positions, to be eventually wiped away and reveal the colourful reality behind it all. A representation that demonstrated not only the French people's will to fight, but also the spreading of hope. It could also be a reference or a stylistic choice to base it on the overall colour grading from Schindler's List, where the reds cut through the black and white, much like the little girl's coat during the liquidation scene. This colourful reveal is down to the player's actions to dismantle Nazi control over the city and the countryside slowly. It's up to the players to decide how they perform these acts of sabotage, either through stealth, using disguises, silenced weapons and melee combat, or just by going full guns blazing. Outside of liberating Paris, there are various side missions that the player can take part in, most notably races across the city, which seem to fit the main character as he is a driver and mechanic at heart, so it does make sense. But at the same time, it does feel a little out of place, taking part in these races alongside a strict Nazi occupation force. I could also group this side activity with the other seemingly odd choices for liberation targets, where instead of taking out a German position, it also has the player perform stunt jumps, collecting photographs, and performing scenic overlooks similar to Assassin's Creed to liberate the people of Paris. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I guess they were added to create some variation between the free play activities. Overall, the experience outside primary missions is good fun in small stints. While it does become repetitive after some time, I also made slow progress to liberating Paris, so it did feel like I was slowly making a difference and accomplishing my overall goal. Alongside this, the more the player liberates Paris by removing guard positions and sniper towers, the easier main missions become, as once these targets are gone, they're gone for good. So other than the monetary gain you get per target, it also impacts the difficulty of missions down the line, allowing the player to make their experience easier and making the entire side activity more beneficial to the player. The story for the Saboteur, in my opinion, is okay. It's far from a writing masterpiece, but it's also not a complete disaster. It places the player in a unique location that I don't think we've ever really explored in video games before, and offers a historically rich and morally complex backdrop for the narrative. The plot follows Sean's quest for vengeance after the Nazi colonel Dierke executes his friend, Jules. In his pursuit, he combines forces with the French Resistance Network and the British SOE, and uncovers various Nazi secrets, including references to the occult and Germany's attempts at nuclear technology. The supporting characters such as Luke, Veronique, Skylar, and Santos are all exceptionally close to their respective cliches, and while they aren't bad characters, they're not particularly memorable or groundbreaking. Towards the end of the game, it has evidence of being rushed due to the constraints put on by EA, and the fact that the studio itself was on the verge of being shut down. The narrative fumbles its way to the final confrontation with Dierke, and even then, during this encounter, while I quite like the handling of it, it did leave something to be desired. Instead of a grand final boss battle with the main antagonist of the entire game, you instead find him at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and all it takes is one bullet to send him down. While I approve of this in some way, by showing that Djerka was just a man, nothing special. It also feels really anticlimactic. From reading about the development, it does seem a large amount of content had to be scrapped or rushed to get the game out, and while the ending does still offer some satisfaction, it could have been built up and ended a lot better. To me, the story combines elements from various fiction into an entertaining plotline. It shares characteristics from Indiana Jones and James Bond in how its dialogue is written and how certain characters are portrayed. There's a whole plotline where you have to retrieve an occult-like object like the Ark of the Covenant from a Nazi crypt. While it's funny to treat it like an Indiana Jones movie, when I first played it, I couldn't tell if they were going for a more serious tone, talking about the despicable nature of the Nazi occupation and the tenacity of the French resistance movement, or a weird mix of profound moments and comedic elements. And throughout the game, you'll find historical inaccuracies all over the place. For example, in your first moment in the game, the characters discuss the looming threat of war from Germany, but later you find out that this scene takes place in 1940, at which point France and Britain have been at war with Germany for at least 3 months. And then the more you explore and progress through the story, the more you find Nazi technology that looks like it's straight out of the Wolfenstein reboot, with things like the Terror Squad units, the double-barreled tanks, and the Nazi nuclear program. As someone who is really getting into the history of World War II, I was pretty perplexed the first time round. I found the timeline inaccuracies quite jarring, but the more I played, the more I understood what Pandemic was going for in this title. They never said it accurately depicted what was happening at this time, which is evident when you play it. While certain characters such as Sean Devlin are based on real-life members of the SOE, namely William Grover Williams, it was never meant to be a tribute or an accurate retelling of Paris' struggle with the occupation and the work done by the resistance. Instead, Pandemic have taken elements from actual history and have been inspired by it and the various works of fiction that would fit in, and masterfully blended it to create an entertaining plotline. All this featuring references to things like Indiana Jones with the crypt object, or that classic relationship between Skylar and Sean, to me feeling like a Bond girl setup. It all kind of works together. And that's the difference to me when you're trying to tell a historical story. Are you trying to take a more serious tone with it, or are you focused more on the fun woven between the plot and the gameplay? There are games out there that try and tell a serious story or pay homage to the fall of World War II, but completely botch it by crowbarring elements into it that just don't fit, implementing weapons, tactics, voice lines, and even whole campaigns lazily by not doing their appropriate research. I can give the Saboteur a pass for its inaccuracies because they clearly weren't going for something that was serious and factual. They're trying to make something entertaining using the setting of a historical event. Games such as Call of Duty Vanguard and to some respect Battlefield 5 want to represent a near enough factual portrayal of the events, but get lazy and often get so many things wrong when trying to be accurate. Usually the argument is, oh, well, it's alternate history, or it's for the gameplay, but there's only so much you can stretch those lines. If you want to change historical events to better suit what you're trying to portray, then advertise it as such. Don't retroactively change it when you get called out for the laziness or incorrect information. There's a delicate balance between trying to be historically accurate to the events that you're portraying while also keeping in mind that it's a video game. Of course, you want the end product to be entertaining, but if you're using a specific event or setting or characters, you should do your utmost to be as factually accurate to the source. Missions in Call of Duty Vanguard in particular stand out to me, as I recently rewatched some of the missions, and there are countless inaccuracies throughout most of the levels. These missions are explicitly using real events such as the Battle of Midway, Bougainville, or Tobruk, and are seemingly try to show what that event was like, but ignore the details which make the experience more immersive and accurate. Even when you compare it to World at War, which is still not as accurate as it could be, it at least didn't shy away from trying to stay true to the events of the war. The missions that take place during the fall of Berlin will always strike me as a fantastic attempt to show what the fighting was like during this time. At least they weren't afraid to represent the real history and the bloodiness of it all. After the release of the Saboteur, the game was met with reasonable reviews. Many critics disliked the voice acting and had issues with the level design, which had flaws due to the time constraints and the studio closing down. Pandemic's fate was sealed before the release of the Saboteur. Even if the game was a critical success, the studio was defunct as of November 2009. A skeleton crew from Pandemic was sent to EA to address issues with the PC port and apply any last-minute updates, but that's as far as it would go. Pandemic's final swan song title, while not as successful as some of their previous games such as Battlefront, still holds a special place in fans' hearts, as a final testament to Pandemic's place in gaming history. Fans were right to fear EA's acquisition of Pandemic, as EA slowly pivoted towards either large AAA titles or the emerging mobile market. Pandemic sat in the middle of these two, producing games that were big but not big enough. The writing was on the wall from the get-go, as EA's bureaucracy slowly tied the noose around Pandemic, limiting their emerging products until they finally dropped. The Saboteur was one of my favourite games when I was younger. I was slowly getting into historical games thanks to previous titles like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, and I was already familiar with Pandemic thanks to Mercenaries and Battlefront. So when the Saboteur launched, it captivated me from the very start. And while I slowly pieced together that not everything I'm seeing is historically accurate, it drove me to research those events and this period of history for myself. It's games like this that cultivated my desire to learn more. It's what's driven me to pursue a degree in history. Sure, the Saboteur is far from a masterpiece by any standards, but it's damn good fun. And I mean, who doesn't enjoy ripping through hordes of Nazis, right? And let's not forget the tragedy that is Pandemic's downfall. Pandemic produced a heap of games that I thoroughly enjoy and miss every day we don't have either a sequel or something new coming out from this talented crew. If EA could do something right, it would at least be looking at the repertoire left to them by Pandemic and bring something new to the market, or return a classic like Mercenaries. Hell, even give this game a remaster because that's in keeping with the current market, right? I just hope these franchises don't sit in EA's basement any longer. Maybe one day they'll get to see the light of day once again. It already happened with Battlefront, why not do it again? But what do you think? Should the Saboteur come back? Or are some things just best left the way they are? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.